Imagine saving $94,000 in just 30 minutes. That is exactly what happened to one of my clients. The key was understanding your tax situation, but the important part is understanding it correctly. In fact, this client initially turned away the 30-minute meeting because they failed to properly understand their tax situation. And it was only when I insisted, because they'd already paid for this session, that we really sit down and have a look at their figures, that they realized the importance of this meeting. Today I'm going to discuss 3 game-changing areas so you can make sure you never turn away a meeting that could save you thousands. First, we'll start with understanding your tax situation, in particular capital gains. Second, we'll look at how your software can help you put you in a position so you can actually understand your current situation. And third, we'll talk about how your accountant can play a key role in helping you save tax. Understanding capital gains correctly is vital to doing any kind of tax planning and to making decisions on how your final picture looks. So when you are doing tax planning and when you are looking at your capital gains, you need to understand how it actually works. So at a basic level, it's going to be your sale price less your acquisition cost is going to decide whether you've got a capital gain or a capital loss. But there's more to it than that, especially when we start to talk more and more numbers and when we start to have mixes of capital gains, losses, short-term gains, long-term gains. We need to really understand what is the formula to calculate our final taxable amount. Now, the reason this is important is because our 50% discounts are applied after our losses are taken into account. So let's take someone that's got a $200,000 capital gain. It's been held for over 12 months. They've made no other losses. We're going to take a 50% discount on that then, and we're going to end up with $100,000 of taxable income from that gain. Now let's take that same example, but now we've got a $200,000 gain, but we've also got a $125,000 loss. Now, this is where some of my clients have gone wrong in the past. They've gone, oh, 200,000 held for over 12 months. Let's cut that in half. We've got 100,000. We've got a $125,000 loss. So overall, we're going to have a $25,000 loss. And this is incorrect. This is because the order that you need to apply things. So what we need to do is we need to take the $200,000 gain. We need to take away the $125,000 loss. So now we have a $75,000 gain that's left. Now that was held for over 12 months. So we get a 50% discount on that. So we're left with $37,500 of taxable income. Now you can see this is quite different. We actually end up with taxable income, whereas in the first situation, maybe the lack of understanding, thought we were going to have a loss. So this is where you can start to lose out. And this is exactly what happened to my client. They thought, I'm in a loss position. I don't need to do anything. All's well in the world. Whereas when we actually looked at it, I said, actually, sorry, you're going to have quite a significant amount of gains just because of the order of how things have to apply. This leads perfectly into the second one, and that is understanding your situation by using your software. So they would have never known that they had made these gains and their gains were in the crypto space if they hadn't have kept their crypto software up to date. So when I looked at their crypto software after trying to tell them, let's do this because you've paid for this meeting, I went in there and discovered this situation. So they had already looked and worked out what they thought. I then went in and showed them the actual calculations to show them the actual gains. But this wouldn't have happened if they hadn't have kept things up to date. Now, because they'd kept their software up to date, I was able to look at it and have a look at their other positions, so their unrealized positions. And we discovered they were holding a lot of positions that were in a major loss position that they were thinking about disposing of anyway. They realized these coins weren't going anywhere, for instance, and they weren't going to dispose of them, but they had no plans to do it at that time. So when we looked at their situation, there was $400,000 of potential capital losses there that they could use. And they were going to sell them anyway. So they went ahead and sold these prior to 30th of June and now had a $400,000 of extra losses that they could apply against their gains. Now, of course, because of the order we have to do things, we had to apply these against their gains first, but it resulted in them reducing their taxable income by $200,000. And because of the tax bracket they were on, the highest bracket, which is 47 cents with the Medicare levy, it saved them $94,000 in tax, just by recognizing these gains that they were going to do anyway, but by timing them in the current financial year. And that's the key. Not every decision is going to be just based on tax, but if it's a decision you were going to make anyway, the timing is really important, and they couldn't have done this without their software. Now, something like Crypto Tax Calculator, they actually have a really cool tool here, which is called tax loss harvesting, where you can see what losses you've potentially got. And the key, no matter what software you're using, you're wanting to look at what is your cost base for your currently held assets versus what's their current market value and what's the unrealized gain or loss. Because then you can start making decisions on what happens if I sell that asset before the end of financial year. And you want to really have an understanding of what happens if you sell the gains. Is that actually going to be the most beneficial situation for you? And the same with the losses. and you can start to incorporate that into your decision-making process as well. And what's really good with this, you can start to do some planning around this. What happens if I sell $50,000 of losses? What about if I recognize $100,000 more of gains? How does that impact my tax position? Now, if you are looking to join Crypto Tax Calculator, I do have a link down in the bio where you can get 20% discount. So if you are thinking about joining, those kind of things really help support the channel. Now, this also works if you're using shares, for instance. ShareSite, which is another really good tool for tax time. I do have a link in the description again down below. That is a really good tool if you're wanting to look at the unrealized gains report. You can look at the unrealized gains report and see where your current positions are on your shares and ETFs. Now, the key to any of this for either software is you've got to keep them up to date. But I think you should be doing that on an ongoing basis so you can make these decisions throughout the year. But at least do it prior to the end of financial year so you can just have a look at where am I currently at? Am I in a gain position? Do I need to make sure I've got money put away from tax? And is there any way I can reduce that down by doing things I maybe were going to do anyway, but just by timing them in the correct financial year to optimize my tax position? And of course, this is where number 3 steps in, and it's utilizing your accountant to help with these things. I really think anyone that has significant investments or runs a business should be meeting with their accountant prior to end of financial year. And the reason for this is you want to make sure your understanding of your tax position actually matches tax law. As we can see in my example here, my client misunderstood how capital gains were applied and could have either lost out on these $94,000 of savings. So by having a conversation with the accountant, it might just trigger something you haven't thought about. But you've got to keep your information up to date throughout the year so that then you can look at actual figures. You want to know what is my current actual position. I want to look at what my estimates are coming up and look at where that's going to leave me at the end. And I think by utilizing your professionals in whatever industry it is, whether it's your accountant or whether it's your lawyer or whether it's your financial planner or whether it's your mortgage broker, you're utilizing their knowledge to look at your situation. You should already be on top of it, but you're leveraging the experts in those areas to make sure you're optimizing your position. If you're wanting to know more about how tax planning can help you save money, I've done a much more in-depth video on the concept of it, which I'd love to you go and check out next.